Broadcasting to the universe from the heart of the Music City.
This is Big Podcast.
I was hanging out in Los Angeles a few years ago. I was going out there a lot, actually. Had a guy out there that I knew, big dude, worked out a lot. And another friend of mine out there was like, I could never do that. Big dude gave him some advice, and I've thought about it a lot. He says, inch by inch, life is a cinch. That was his belief. He said, I started out like you. Small dude, now I'm huge. And also took a lot of steroids. Could the same thing apply to your podcast? Yes. Yes, it can. And we're going to talk about that. It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. My name is David Hooper. The website, bigpodcast.com. This podcast, all about growing your audience, getting more people to your podcast, making a podcast that people care about, making a podcast that makes you money. I've got a weekly newsletter. It goes out every Friday morning, New York City time. It is called Big Podcast Insider. This episode is the audio edition of that newsletter. This is issue 208. Here's what we're talking about. Small hinges, big doors. Just what I was talking about. Which one is your audience? How to be a better host. A free note-taking tool. 2-minute advice to create better podcasts. Thanksgiving and podcasting. Also some classified ads, things that will help you to grow your podcast, get more people to your podcast, make more money with your podcast, the things that this podcast is about. This episode of Build a Big Podcast brought to you by Riverside.fm. Speaking of LA, I did an interview with a guy named Greg Bissonette. He was in David Lee Roth's band for a long time. When David Lee Roth left Van Halen, Greg Bissonette, he was the drummer in that band. He was the drummer in Ringo Starr's All-Star Band. He's done a lot over the years. He's in LA. I'm in Nashville. We were able to make it sound like it was in the same room thanks to remote recording, which is exactly what you get with Riverside.fm. Multi-track recording. You could actually do 2, 3, 4 people, each of them in different cities, each of them being recorded on different tracks. That makes editing so easy. And if you want to make it even easier, they've got text-based editing. It's a good way to get in the podcasting game. Even if you're not an audio pro, you're going to sound great. You're going to be able to edit your podcast just like you edit a text document. I want you to try it out. It is free for you for the first 2 hours. Take a look. Call up your buddies in LA. Call up your buddies in Chicago, Walla Walla, Washington, wherever they are. Get them on the line. Record yourself using Riverside.fm. They're going to give you a couple of hours. Take a look at it. See if you like it. If you do, this is how to stick around. It's a discount code that will get you 15% off. It's Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's Riverside.fm, the discount code. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. All right, let's get to it. This is how it works. I'm going to go from thing to thing to thing, all the things that I mentioned, starting with small hinges, big doors, ending with the classified ads and everything in between. What you will hear when I go from thing to thing to thing, this sound. That's how you know if you want more information, if you want the links. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com, that is where to go. This is issue number 208. You ready? Here we go. Small hinges, big doors. As the year winds down, I've been looking at various projects that I've got on my desk, and I would really like to finish up on some of these projects. Sound familiar? Yeah, good. That means you get excited about stuff. You've got ideas, maybe more ideas, and you've got time to actually finish them. That's good. But I always think about this with podcasting, books, a lot of the stuff that I do. 90% might as well equal 0% because I'm not going to release a 90% project. I release 100% projects. I've got to finish some of these up. One of them that I'm working on, it's a Q&A series where podcasters from around the world, they've sent me questions, most of them about growing their podcasts, but some of them growing their podcasts adjacent. How do I get a better sound? How do I get guests like Greg Bissonette? Well, you can listen to these episodes and find out. I will be going through those things. The reason I'm mentioning this, though, is because I'll be doing things a little bit differently than I normally do. Normally, I record into Audacity. I'm doing that actually right now. But I'm not in the cult. Okay, maybe. I really love Audacity. I think it's very empowering to have a free tool that allows you to record yourself. I'll give you an example. Talked about it in the last episode. Adobe Audition, it's $25 to $35 a month. Let's say it's $300, $350 a year. Not bad for the great software that it is. But add that up. $250 a year, let's say 10 years, that's $2,500. What could you do with $2,500? Buy yourself a whole new studio. So it's not like it's that much money, $25 or $35 a month, but it's a free studio, man. If you can take that money and put it somewhere else. Anyway, I'm not complaining about paying the money. I'm actually paying the money, and I'm actually using Adobe Audition to edit this podcast. I'll also be recording some things on Adobe Audition, which is why I'm mentioning this Q&A project. I'm doing this because a lot of the projects that come through, people use Adobe Audition. It is important in our business, the podcasting business, if you're doing work for other people, and people do hire me for things, mostly consulting, sometimes hosting. I'm an idea guy primarily, but I'm also a utility guy. So sometimes I'll be on a project and say, hey man, would you mind stepping in, hosting this, co-hosting this, reading this? Yeah, I can do that. My point is that people record things in different ways. It is important for us to be flexible. Am I always going to have Audacity as my home? Yes, probably. I've been using it for 25 years, probably not going to switch as my main DAW. But if you are coming to me using something else, I want to be able to work with you. I don't want you to have to change for me. That's one of the things when we talk about audio monetization. Yeah, you can have people do things your way. And sometimes that's important. But if you can do things their way, make it easier on them, and their way is fine, Adobe Audition is fine, why not? I'm looking at that over the next couple of weeks or so. You're going to be hearing a different type of recording from me, a little bit more laid back. I'll be doing it in my office, not in the studio that I'm in now, different mics, different equipment that I'm testing out, and also Adobe Audition. If you're interested in this, you haven't subscribed, do this. Go to bigpodcast.com. On the front page, you will see how to subscribe to this podcast. You can do that via iPhone. You can do that via an Android device. If you want an RSS feed, I got you, man. Bigpodcast.com. Do that now if you haven't already. You will never miss an episode of this podcast. If you've got questions that you want me to answer in this series, reach out to me via Blue Sky. You know Blue Sky. I've talked about it here before. Talked about 1 million people joining in 1 week. Not anymore. It's 1 million people joining every day. You're not on it? I got the links. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. Big Podcast AMP. Speaking of audio monetization, that's what the AM and AMP stands for. AMP, AMP, Audio Monetization Program. It's a personal coaching program to help you do 3 things. 1, grow your podcast audience. 2, get people talking about your podcast. And 3, make more money with your podcast and your podcasting skills. I've got all the details linked at bigpodcast.com/amp. That's bigpodcast.com/AMP. Which one is your audience? I've got a graphic. You're going to have to go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com and look at issue number 208 to see it. It's a chart, and it is a clever way for you to emotionally connect with your podcast listeners or think about how to connect with the people that you want to listen to your podcast. It is based on age. We'll call it generations. Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, baby boomers. It's an interesting way to think about how you connect with people. I'll tell you a funny story about a guy that I interviewed. During the lockdown, he gets this Evel Knievel toy. Now remember, we're all outside during this time, getting to know the great outdoors. So he goes outside in his yard, on his driveway, wherever, and he's setting up this Evel Knievel toy. And Evel Knievel, a stuntman in the 70s, famous for motorcycle jumps. It's a wind-up motorcycle, and he's doing all these jumps with this toy motorcycle that he is filming and putting on Instagram. Speaking of Van Halen, I was talking about David Lee Roth earlier. The singer who took over after him, Sammy Hagar, sees one of these videos, repost it, because this guy had used a Sammy Hagar song in the background. That video starts getting traction. This guy's channel starts getting traction. This dude's a professional musician playing with an Evel Knievel toy. A new world opens up to him as far as social media. It just so happens when I was a kid, I had this toy. And it just so happens, because I'm in the advertising direct marketing business, I have an ad for that toy hanging in my office. It was a rapport builder. That's why we do this stuff. That's why it's important. So your publicist mentioned you're racing Evel Knievel. He said, oh yeah, it's just kind of a fun COVID distraction. I said, man, you're never going to believe this. I've got an ad for that thing in my office. So boom, we've got this instant rapport. That's how we started the interview. It established this dude as a fun guy. He and I connect because we're a similar age, and we can see each other as people, not just a host or a guest, but real people having a real conversation. So if you want to take your interviews to the next level or have a next level connection with your audience, I want you to think about this chart. I have it linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. How to be a better host. I've got a video. I want you to watch it. It's 3 minutes long. He's got some great advice that will help your hosting. Here are my thoughts on his advice and just some advice for you in general as far as being a better host. He suggests that you record and review yourself. I agree. This is one of the best reasons to edit your own audio. He's got what he calls the first review. And when he records himself, he's doing it on video. For you and me, maybe that's just audio. If you're doing audio and video, though, he's saying focus only on the audio when you do your first review. Just listen, focus on the voice, ignore any visuals that can be distracting. Side note, when it comes to being a better host, this is one of the reasons if you're using a platform like Riverside that does video, and I got nothing against video, but if you're doing an audio podcast, you do not need to see the person that you are talking to, and that person does not need to see you. Sometimes it benefits you not to see someone. It's too distracting. There are too many things that you can comment on. Hosts with an audio-only podcast need to be focusing on the audio. You do not need the distraction. And it's not that I don't trust you to be able to do your job. I'm more concerned with the guest. I've been talking about music and guitars. I'm a guy in Nashville, okay? We're born with guitars. If I'm doing a video interview, I see a guitar hanging on the wall, I'm gonna be like, hey, man, what's that guitar? I get distracted, man. And yeah, you can build rapport. But do you, as a listener, want to hear me talk about guitars? Probably not. You're here for podcasting. And your listeners, they are there for something very specific. Not to talk about the background that none of them can see because you have an audio-only podcast. Here's what he asks you to listen for. What aspects of your voice do you love? What needs improvement? That's what you listen for. It's two sides of the same coin. What do you like and you want more of? What do you not like and you don't want as much of? He advises you to get a transcript, read the words that you have spoken, and look at filler words. That can be helpful. Search for Something like Riverside, they're going to find that automatically for you. Show me the filler words. Export just the filler words. If you do a 10-minute podcast, 1 minute of filler words, you need to work on those. Here's the bottom line for you. Recording yourself, reviewing and editing the tape, that is a powerful exercise that will significantly increase your speaking and presentation skills. I encourage you to do it. This 3-minute video, it is available to you. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. Free note-taking tool. It's called Simple Note. All your notes synced up to all your devices. So if you've got an iPhone, you've got an Android device, an iPad, a Mac, a Windows machine, a Linux, your notes can be everywhere. They can be accessed via the web. And not only your notes, but the notes of your co-hosts. Maybe you've got something from your guests that guests have submitted. And this is a free tool. It is called Simple Note. I have the link for you to download it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. 2-minute advice to create better podcasts. 3 things that will make your podcast better. 1, when speaking to listeners on your podcast, it is crucial for you to create a personal connection by addressing them as individuals. That means using the word you instead of collective terms like you guys or listeners. Addressing people as individuals helps to create that one-on-one relationship. It makes each listener feel personally acknowledged and valued, as though you're having a conversation directly with that person. It enhances their experience. It fosters loyalty. It's weird for us these days to listen to an old school television show. Hello, out there in TV land. There's like a big wall in between these old school hosts and you, the viewer. Happened in radio. Hello, out there in radio land. Yeah. No, it's you. It is you, not listeners, you. Second thing, using engaging storytelling techniques, that's sharing anecdotes, experiences in a relatable manner, that keeps people captivated. In the ad for Riverside, I talked about a real-world interview using a remote connection. Later on in the podcast, a real-world interview and how I built rapport. These aren't just concepts, catchphrases. This is actually what is happening in my life as a podcaster and what is happening in your life as a podcaster. So we can connect like that. Your life. So those first 2 things, I just did them right there. Your life. This is what is happening. And the listeners, of Build a Big Podcast. No. You don't care about the other people. It's you. And 2 very specific things that you can connect with. Tell stories. Facts tell, stories sell. 3rd thing, asking rhetorical questions that keep your audience engaged and prompts them to think about their own perspectives, further deepening their connection with your content. Have you ever gotten into a situation like this? Think about the first time when you experienced this. What would you do if this happened to you? It gets you thinking, being an active participant in the content, not just receiving it. Those are 3 of these techniques. I've got more of them. They are linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. Thanksgiving and podcasting. We are here. Thanksgiving dinner. Already a recipe for awkwardness, especially after an election. But it reaches a whole new level when you have a podcast and your family sitting there at Thanksgiving dinner with you has listened to that podcast. True story. This happened a couple days ago. I got in a little trouble when I was in college. Nothing really serious. I was running my big mouth, which is working great for me as a podcast and radio host. But I'm there with an uncle, an aunt, my father, and my mother. And my mother mentioned something about me being on the front page of the paper during college because of something that I said that caused a big stir and could have gotten me kicked out of college. Again, big mouth, big trouble. And I shot her a look. I said, we're not going to go into that. That was 30 years ago. Imagine if you've got a podcast and your relatives are listening to that on the way over. And Aunt Linda, she talks about that colorful story you just shared about your college days. The one that you thought only your loyal listeners would hear. Awkward silence. You're used to that, right? That makes for good interviews. But still, with your family, it can be weird. It can be weird. My mom was just trying to be funny, by the way. I don't think anybody's holding what I did in college against me. And it wasn't that big a deal, but, it's still kind of awkward. You never know when somebody's going to bring up the past, including the recent past, something you've had on your podcast. By the way, should this have happened to you, there's your content for the next episode. Make Christmas weird. If you've ever been in an awkward situation because of your podcast, let me know. You can reach out to me via Blue Sky. Again, the links, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 208. Classified ads for you. These are things that will help you to grow your podcast, get more people to your podcast, make more money with your podcast, automate guest booking for your podcast with Book Like a Boss. If you're tired of guests missing interviews, Book Like a Boss handles all the little details when it comes to guest booking. 1, automating guest scheduling. You don't have to go back and forth. 2, automatic reminders, including text messages sent to guests and sent to you. You ever missed an interview? It happens. And if it's never happened to you, it will happen to you, even with Book Like a Boss, but make it less likely to happen to you with Book Like a Boss. It integrates with all email and calendar software. You can try it for free. I've got it linked, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. pCloud, lifetime backup storage. They are having a special right now. Pay once, get storage for life. I have been using this for years. Don't lose your hard work. Have you ever had that happen? It ain't pretty. When I'm writing a book, I'm backing that thing up in triplicate. I'm putting it on the local hard drive. I'm putting it on the cloud. I'm sending a copy to my wife. I'm printing it out. You do not want to lose your hard work, whether it's writing, whether it's podcasting, whether it's photos that you've taken. Don't lose the moment. pCloud has lifetime storage that backs everything up for you. One low price. Back it up for the rest of your life. I've got a special link for you to get 10 gigabytes free. You'll find that at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. Thanks for listening to Build a Big Podcast. I want to help you finish off the year strong, start the new year even stronger. Reach out to me at bigpodcast.com. While you are there, subscribe to this podcast. You will never miss an episode, and that can happen for you with just one click of your mouse. I've got 3 choices for you: iPhone, Android, an RSS feed. Whatever you want, I'm going to hook you up. Every single episode delivered to you free of charge. And unsubscribe at any time. If it doesn't work for you, hey, no hard feelings. Everything at bigpodcast.com. Go there right now before you forget. Subscribe And I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.